I speak to you in the name of God, source of all being, incarnate Word, and Holy Spirit. The Feast of All Saints, one of the central and holiest of all our gatherings in the Christian Church. People all across the world have either begun and completed their celebration of All Saints, or just undertaking it as we are, or it's yet to come. There's so much anticipation for the beauty and the depth of this day and tomorrow, when we remember those nearest and dearest to us, All Souls Day, those who have died and we see no longer, but believe that they are changed. Their lives have not ended. These days, these 3 days, Halloween, All Saints, All Souls, are deep and meaningful to Christians. In this lesson, what Matthew's Gospel, what we call the Beatitudes in Matthew's Gospel, are at the heart of how we celebrate and understand the Feast of All Saints. And yet this year I wonder, what do we feel? What do we think about these promises that Jesus is making to us and to all of life in each moment from his life forward to now? This is a time of great sorrow. It's a time of great struggle. It's a time of great confusion. Yes, there's hope. There's embers of hope burning in our hearts, but they're covered for many of us. There's ash over them, and we feel it. The division in our country, the division in the world, the worry about what Tuesday will bring in the United States and afterwards. Climate change and what it has wrought on the West Coast and continues to bring to bear on the East Coast. Named hurricanes and tropical storms continuing to buffet the Gulf and the East Coast. Fires still burning in California. And COVID-19, which has taken well over 200,000 lives in this country alone. And with winter coming, more deaths are surely coming. Spikes everywhere, shutting down the hopeful beginnings of businesses and concerns and worship services and regathering. We've had to pause out of concern for safety. And yet we know that people are struggling financially and that those struggles will only become more dire. In the midst of this, we hear these words from Jesus. And I think, at least for us who live today in the midst of all this, in a desacralized world where belief is as rare as anything precious, how true do these words ring? How much do we believe them? And how do we think they are going to come true? How do we think that Jesus' promises that we call the Beatitudes, these 9 promises, how will they come true? By what means does Jesus intend to bring them to bear in the lives of the crowd that heard him and in our lives? Well, I think there are 3 answers to this. One for me and for us, it's a big question mark. In this desacralized world, we listen to Jesus and we want to believe, and yet at the same time we wonder, how will these promises come to be? And for that great crowd gathered around the mountain and up the mountain, and his disciples gathered around him, what did they think? Well, I think it's a different answer for them. I always like to look at margins, reading at the margins of books, reading at the footnotes of books, looking at the margins of pictures and beyond them. So I always go to these gospel lessons that mean so much to you and so much to me, and I look before them and I look after them and see what's there. Who were the people making up this crowd that came to listen to Jesus? You can feel their attention gathered around him, but who were they? And how might they have grasped and understood what Jesus was saying to them? Well, just in the verses preceding what we call the Beatitudes, just before the beginning of chapter 5 in the Gospel of Matthew, it tells us, they were people whom Jesus had healed. He had brought new hope and new life to them, a great crowd of people. They had been coming out to him from all around the Galilee. They had heard about this wonder worker. How little they knew about him, but they had heard that he was curing people and making them whole and making them well. And the description the gospel gives of their maladies is varied. There are moonstruck people among them. There are people with demon possession. There are people with bodily illness and mental illness. All of these people. And he had healed them all. And it is they, this great crowd of people who have been healed, who are gathered around, and they are listening with great expectation. What's next? They believe him. He has already worked in their lives and brought health and wholeness in a way they probably never expected to see. So their quotient of belief, if I can say it that way, is high. And what do they think the means of this next step for them will be? These promises. Well, unlike me, maybe unlike you, it wasn't so much of a mystery. They were around the one they thought was making the answer. Jesus was the answer. He had healed them. He would make these promises come true. So that's two of the three responses to the Beatitudes that I see. One, ours, hope, but wondering, can this be true? How can this be true? Their hope, which is founded on an experience. He healed me. He's the one who will make this come true. And then Jesus' own expectation, which I think is different. Throughout the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, many, many times, Jesus turns to a person he has healed, who touched the hem of his garment, who came to him with a child who was desperately ill, who came with a friend who was paralyzed. And they wanted so much to get that friend to Jesus that they took the roof off of a house where he was teaching and healing and lowered the friend in. He turned to these people, parents, friends, and he said, "Your faith has made you well." This is not false modesty on Jesus' part. Jesus is trying to point them to a reality of God's world, the world he believed in and that he knew. God's love was not only located in Jesus, it was everywhere. This was Jesus' main message. He went around the Galilee proclaiming the nearness of the beloved community. This was his main, first, and lasting action as he began his ministry. And he told his followers to do it as well. He sent them out and said, "Go and proclaim the nearness of the beloved community and heal people and teach them." Those three things. So his answer was that these promises would come true through the community itself. These people who had been healed were leaving behind their old networks of security. They were stepping out in a way that was dangerous because your family, the great extended family networks of that time, that's where your security was. And these people, because he had healed them, were willing to step out of those networks and follow this unknown man. All they knew is, he healed me. What was going to happen next? So he's saying, oh, we're starting a new family. It's God's family. It includes all of life. It is the beloved community, and you're part of it. You have all the power together to do good, to love, and to bring love to flower in the world. You are the ways together that these promises I am making to you will come true. But it's not as simple as that. It's not just a mass movement that he was promising, nor was it just a mass movement that Martin Luther King was promising at the March on Washington when that great crowd, I know you have all seen the historical footage. It's so stirring to see 100,000 people gathered around and Martin Luther King preaching, "Let freedom ring." And the means of that freedom ringing, yes, was that body of people and all those who were watching. Yes, it was that living community, just as Jesus was saying to the people who gathered around him on the mountain, whom he had cured. You are the means of these promises coming true. But he was saying more than that. In Mark's gospel, and in Matthew, and in Luke, some people come to him, as they often seem to do, to trap him, and they wanted to know what he thought about the resurrection from the dead, which is appropriate for today. What about all those people, those saints who have come before us? We remember them today, but is there more to it than just remembering them? Do they rise? Do they live again? And they're trying to trap him, and he says, "Do you not know the Scriptures? In the book of Moses," he said, when God speaks to Moses from the burning bush, he says, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am the God of your foremothers and your forefathers." And then Jesus goes on and says, because God is not the God of the dead, but God is the God of the living. And all past, present, and future are alive to God. So this is not just a day of memory, my friends, my circle of family, for those who have come before us, who have set a good example, as they surely have for us. This is a day to take hold of the truth that they are with us, that our community of the beloved community is with them as well. Not only the collective action of all the church, of all those who are of good heart, of all those who believe in overflowing love, but all those who have come before us are standing beside us, standing in the circle of those who live because all live to God and all doing good. I led a guided meditation for the clergy of the Diocese of California last week, and I invited them to make an altar in their hearts and place on the altar the pictures of those whom they loved, family members, loved ones, teachers who had died and we see no longer, and place them on that altar as we do on the Day of the Dead, on All Souls' Day, and to say a prayer of gratitude for them. Can you see those people on the altar of your heart? It goes without saying that you love them, or you would not have placed them there. But it also goes without saying that they were full human beings. They were full human beings. So there were complications in their lives, sorrows in their lives, struggles in their lives, failures as well as triumphs, disappointments and betrayals as well as love. But here is the truth of the beloved community that God has made and that God's Son Jesus proclaimed. All that complicated their lives, all that caused them to stumble at some point, all that is gone. The central promise that Jesus makes in the Beatitudes is this: those whose hearts have been cleansed can see God. That means all the things that obscure our vision of God, all that keeps us from seeing God, everything that keeps us from experiencing God, and that means everything that keeps us from seeing overflowing love, that all goes away in the life that is eternal. So when we see God, we see love. And when we see love, there is nothing further to keep us from moving into full love. And we know that all the things besides love wear out and do not endure. It is love alone that lasts. So those people who have gone before us, the saints and the dearly loved ones, the souls, all of them stand with you, and they stand with me in this beloved community to meet the trials of today and tomorrow, and to make the promises of the Beatitudes come true.